have read 108 books. Honestly, that is a huge accomplishment considering I did put 100 down as a goal, but I did not expect to actually read 100 books rather than go over it. And yeah, I am proud of myself. And so it was a tough ask to pick a few books out of 100 of books. Anyway, I did it. Hi, and welcome to my channel. Today is going to be the final video of this year. I'm going to be talking about some of my best books of 2024. This was a complete coincidence. I didn't set out to list 12 books for 12 months of a year, but after counting down my list of honorable mentions as well as my best books, I found out that the count came to 12, and I'm also going to be mentioning two bonus books at the end of this video, so stay tuned. The first few books are going to be all honorable mentions. So, first book we are going to talk about is Sabaa Tahir's Heir. Heir is a spin-off series based off of the world of An Ember in the Ashes series. It's not really necessary for you to read the Ember in the Ashes series, but I think you would feel more comfortable if you read it because you get the same characters making cameos, and also you see descendants of those characters, and also the world is set based on the world of An Ember in the Ashes. It takes place 2 decades after the ending of the final book in the Ember in the Ashes series. So you follow these three characters, Ace, Shirsha, and Quill, and three of them have separate, different, unique characterizations. It's wonderfully done by Sabaa Tahir, and you follow them as, they basically try to right wrongs or follow expectations set by whoever is older than them. Especially, it's like, take for example Quill. Quill is Helen Aquila. Helen Aquila is one of the main characters of Ember in the Ashes series. So Quill basically is destined to be the next king emperor of the empire. So he has got that burden on his shoulders, and he's trying to there's also an arranged marriage thing going on, which he does not want. Ace is a young woman who was born in the slums, and she is basically determined to avenge her people who had suffered really long under this Tiral, who is a really bloodthirsty commander. And yeah, she has these magical abilities which she uses to kind of help innocents. Shirsha, who also has these magical powers, and there's also secrets, but she's cast out by her people. She quickly goes on a path where she thought she was doing the right thing, but turns out she isn't. So, again, this is a wonderful, wonderful way for us to dive into this rich world of An Ember in the Ashes series. And this is a great fantasy series, and again, I would highly recommend you pick up An Ember in the Ashes. To It would make the experience all the more better. Moving on to the next honorable mention, which is To a Darker Shore. So, To a Darker Shore is a Hadestown reimagining. You follow our main character, who is kind of like an inventor, and she it comes from a village where every year women, poor women basically, get sacrificed. And this year she is on that chopping block. And her friend, best friend, the prince, volunteers for her, thinking that, because he's a prince, he would be pardoned, but he isn't. And so he gets sacrificed. And the rest of the story, the majority of it, we basically follow her trying to rescue him, bring him back from the underworld. And it is such a good romance between these two. And you also have follow these two characters as they grow, and it's such a wonderful reimagining and a story in its own. So I highly recommend you go pick it up. And it's also really very underrated because I personally haven't seen many people talk about it. It also has an excellent autistic representation, and there's also a fat representation as well. The main character is fat. There's also queer representation, I believe. So, all in all, this is a great book. Another reimagining. This is a reimagining of the red thread myth, which is like an East Asian mythology, if I'm not wrong. So, this is the last dragon of the East. You follow our main character, they can see red threads of fate. But when she sees her own thread, it is not red, it's gray. She also finds out her mom is dying, and the medicine that is required to save her can only come from this dragon who is thought to be long lost. There is also another thing, which is the king. Also kind of finds out about his abilities, and also tasks him to look for the same dragon, but for his own good. He goes on this adventure to find this long lost dragon. And yeah, it is a dark fantasy. And again, in my opinion, it is one of the best reimaginings of this thread of fate myth. I absolutely love hearing stories about this mythology. The author does a great job creating the world of the story. She did a great job in writing the main characters, breathing new life into this already rich mythology, and also a great slow burn romance. We are going to move on to the next honorable mention, which is another fantasy. This is like underrated because I personally have seen like a handful of people talk about it. It is Spin of Fate. So this takes place in a world which is kind of loosely inspired by the laws of karma, and the book is not only inspired by Indian philosophy, but also Japanese philosophy. And so we have this world which is governed by this law called tyrannic law, like a segregation law, because it separates their world into these dimensions or realms, and it is based on their morality. We follow our first character that we see in the book, which is Aina. So Aina comes from the lower realm. Then we have Aranel, who is like a noble, but he comes from the upper realm. And there's also another character who comes from the lower realm, but he is like a rebel, and he is Mezan. So here also we follow these three characters, Aina, Aranel, and Mezan. And they basically have three different goals at the beginning of the story. And as we basically will follow them throughout, as they will have a common goal finally. And Honestly, this is perhaps one of the best fantasies of this year. The world building is really intricate. Should not have been surprised. This was blurred by Rosario Munda, who is the author of Fireborn. You also have these majestic creatures. For example, like the peacock snake combo that you see on the cover itself. But you only see this creature in the book, but there are other creatures coming in the next books. So there you have it. And I absolutely loved the characters, seeing the characters grow, individually, and also how they bond with each other after the final twist. I can't wait to read the second book, which I hope is coming out this year. Moving on to the next book, which is a completely different genre, which is Martyr by Kavi Akbar. This is a story about Cyrus, who like was an alcoholic, is now sober. So he quite early his mom passed away, and it was a really unfortunate death. I mean, his mom's plane was gunned down in Persian Gulf. His dad also died quite early in his life, and so he has been left to ponder what is the meaning of life, what is the meaning of death, what happens after people die, to kind of come to terms with his parents' death. So he decides to kind of write a book about this topic. And for research, he goes to visit an artist who is basically living out her last days. And the artist is currently in Brooklyn Museum, I believe. Yeah, this artist, they have been diagnosed with a terminal breast cancer, and she basically has installed herself in a quite a unique exhibit, which also I think draws inspiration from a real life exhibit. Whoever visits the exhibit are invited to talk about openly about death, and you can see how it provides a unique perspective. This is where the book really draws you in. Is Orchide and Cyrus both have this really interesting conversations about life, death, grief, love, and everything that encompasses life and death. This book is dark. This is really dark, but thankfully there are some humor here and there, which provide much needed levity uh, to in the story. You are left with a lot of questions than answers, but you won't find any. It's up to you to basically formulate any answers that you might have to the questions you might have. So, yeah, it is a book that you might not find suitable. You might not like if you just read it one time. You might have to read it twice. It is a book that I would describe quite like a tiramisu. You have to kind of let it sit, kind of marinate for it to kind of, it tastes better the next day. Definitely one of my favorite books of 2024. We are going to move on to the last honorable mention, which is Icarus. Icarus is the story of a young teen, and this is again another reimagining of the myth. Icarus is an art thief. This is not something that he chose, but it was imposed on him. And he, one day, when he is stealing from this billionaire, rich guy, Mr. Black. He has been scouting this location, but he never encountered that it was always empty, the house. But this time, when he comes to steal a painting, he encounters Mr. Black's son, Helios, and Helios basically asks him to that if he stays and becomes his like friend, he like talks to him, then he will forget about the stealing. And Icarus agrees because he also needs a friend. Like its title, it has really short chapters that end in like one page. So I think some people, I know some people didn't like that, how short the chapters were. So that is something to keep in mind. Otherwise, it is a wonderful story about queer joy, about found family, about coming of age, and defying expectations. So, yeah, go ahead and pick this up because this deserves to be read by and discovered by more people. So finally, we have come to the best books of 2024. The first book that I would go as to proclaim as my one of the best books I've read this year is Blood Over Bright Haven. So we follow this character who is determined to be the first woman in this university of mages, but it is not easy. And because every time, like even after she gets into the university, her colleagues determined to kind of like make the situation worse. So instead of assigning her a lab assistant, what they do is like they assign a janitor. But actually, this janitor has a past and which might be beneficial to our main character. And this is a standalone fantasy. It's also another dark fantasy. And I love the writing, the world building. It is such a great magic system. And also, there is racism, there is some gore, SA, and also ideation. This gave me Babel vibes. And yeah, this is also a dark academia fantasy. And although there is a romance, I think this would be spoiling it, but it does not have a happy ending. So that might kind of turn you off if you're someone who likes reading a bit of a romance subplot in their books. But for me, it did not, because the rest of the book, the world building, the magic system, the characters, the themes, and like it was everything that women in academia have to face. And it was written really beautifully. And I this made me even more excited to read Sword of Kaigen. So 5 stars, would highly recommend it. I'm so glad I got an arc of this from the publisher. If you have read it, then let me know in the comments. If you've also read Sword of Kaigen, again, comment below. The next book is a really, really short book, so I'm not going to talk in detail. It's like 86 pages. It's Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast. It is basically like Oscar Wilde in all his witty glory, talking about his observations, and how fabulous he is. It's basically what if he had a Twitter account, all of his viral tweets in one book. So that's it. That's basically what the book is about. Oscar Wilde. There's like I don't think there's anything else I can say about the Oscar Wilde. Yeah. So we are going to move on to the next book, which is The Empusium, which is a health resort horror story. So this is set in 1913, right on the eve of World War One. So we have this student who is suffering from TB, and they arrive at this gentleman's guest house, health resort in a place where which I'm not going to pronounce the name of. It's now currently in Western Poland, and so every day you see the residents talking about money, status. Will there be war? Because there is a big one looming. Um, which one is better, monarchy or democracy? Do devils exist? Are women inferior? While you read, there is something really oppressive. You feel like there is something lurking behind the scenes that it's it's yet to come, but when it comes you are just waiting for that moment. So that's another thing. And disturbing things, shocking things happen in the guest house. There's like a lot of dread, lot of build up, and our main character has to basically uncover these truths about himself, and also the things behind the weird, strange happenings that are happening within the sanatorium. It's not a light read, it's not really an easy read. This book is basically perfect if you enjoy reading about the Gothic genre. And this will, I believe, appeal to a very niche sort of people. Not everyone will enjoy reading the book, in my opinion. This book is a completely different genre than this. We are just going to go back and forth, giving whiplash. It is I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. Book is perfect if you are looking for academic rivals to lovers. Imagine what if Lara Jean wrote letters to her academic rivals, and like not the, I have a crush on you kind of letters, but letters where she basically writes every thing that is wrong about, like really bad things, insulting things, that you kind of write in a journal, or maybe just, you know, in your notes app. And what you don't do is write it in your email drafts, because you might one day accidentally send to them. That's what happens in this book. Anything Anne Liang writes, I don't know what she puts in them, because like it does something in my brain, and it's like I read a couple of pages and it's automatically 5 stars. The next book that I want to talk about is a debut, and it is a horror, a psychological horror, which is The Eyes Are the Best Part. It's by Monica Kim. It is such an excellent debut. It's a Korean American who is a college student. Her father has like left their family, and so she's kind of like in charge of the family because her mom is like destroyed. But pretty soon, her mom like has a boyfriend, this white dude called George, and she starts to dream about his eyes, particularly about eating his eyes. As you can decipher, this is about cannibalism. I love the way the author wrote the characters, especially Ji-won's character, relationship between her and her sister. Loved her friends, their friendship. It's overall a slow burn, and it's also focuses on themes like racism. You also have fetishization, and it is such a brilliant book that you should definitely put on your 2025 TBR. We are going to be ending the video with is I Who Have Never Known Man. So the story follows 40 women who are imprisoned in this underground bunker, and they don't remember how they got there, and they have no idea why they got there. And 39 of these women, they remember a life before the cage, like with their families, with their friends, their jobs. But the 40th woman, that is the youngest woman in the group, they only remember a life in this bunker. They don't know a life outside the bunker. And they are all washed over by these male guards. And these male guards are also the ones providing them with food, but they don't tell them anything. There's no hope. There's no way out of this. They are like doomed to die and live and die in this cage. And but what happens is that one day they are let out. They escape. It is not a happy ending. It is a very bleak, very sad book. Tells you beforehand that it is not a book with a happy ending. This is not a book about hope. This is about loneliness. It's about life that will provide you with no answers. And we also don't get to know the name of the protagonist, you know, the young girl. I don't really know how what else to say about the book. It is a book that will leave you feeling more frustrated, but it is also the fact that it makes you think long after finishing the book is what makes it a really good book in my opinion, because I can talk about it, I can discuss it at length and still find no answer. It will make you anxious, depressed, but you will love it um, all the more for it. I think these are all of my favorite books of this year. And I did promise two more bonus book rec: A Deal with the Bossy Devil and Failure to Match by Kaira Parsi. If you're someone who is on Twitter, you might have seen them more than you have perhaps seen your own roommate or your own parents. I also read them after I saw a tweet, and they will give you kind of like the 2000 rom-com feel, and they are not really heavy on smut. They're kind of like the perfect blend of smut and romance, and also being funny. These two are probably one of my favorite romances I've read this year. And yeah, that's it. These are all of my favorite books of this year. And if any of these are also your favorites, then I would love to know. If they are not, then let me know what are your favorite books in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will see you in the new year.